Hello, welcome to Sai-Cology with me, Saira. Have a seat, why don't you? Make yourself at home. Help yourself to some fresh Kool-Aid that I just made myself. Cults. A social group defined by shared beliefs or a common interest, associated with what some call brainwashing, extremely high levels of conformity. But how do people fall prey to these groups? We'll be diving into group psychology, obedience, conformity, and power in the next few episodes.
You could change everything tonight. This is your chance to do something right.
So, first off, the four major characteristics of a cult. 1. A charismatic leader, usually one that is not allowed to be questioned or doubted. 2. Belief system. 3. Control. This is a set of rules and regulations that usually require some sort of exclusivity or secrecy. Remember, humans love things that are exclusive. We need to feel like we belong. You can't tell others about certain rituals, you have to look a certain way or act a certain way. 4. Systems of influence. Besides the leader, there's loads of peer pressure involved. There's also some sort of mind-altering practice like meditation, chanting, singing together, or some other routine meant to break down your mental status. Many groups easily fall into at least some of these categories, and although not all cults are dangerous, it's important that you realize when you're part of a group that partakes in cult-like practices or ideologies. Cults happen because most people in cults don't realize or think that they're in one. There's also a few different types of conformity. 1 is compliance, when we accept influence and outwardly conform even though we privately don't agree, but we do it just to avoid being shamed or be different or to win favor. 2 is internalization, when we publicly and inwardly believe and accept what others say or do. The third way is identification. It's when we conform to the expectations of a role, such as being a police officer or a teacher, even if we don't privately believe those things. Zimbardo's prison study is a good example of this. Now, why are we so vulnerable to these kinds of groups? Why do we conform so easily? In a study by Solomon Asch, he asked people how long the lines were in relation to another. But if everyone else in the room is a plant and they answer the wrong answer, the real participant, who answers last, is more likely to give the wrong answer just because everyone else did. People want to fit in with a group, or the norms, because of normative influence. Or they fall under informational influence, which is believing that others know better or more than they do. Physical synchronization also leads to cohesiveness of thought. So, if you're in a group of people who are all doing the same task or made to say the same things over and over and over, you'll find that as a group you feel more unified and you're going to be more likely to conform. So, who and when are the most vulnerable to this? First of all, kids of divorce, or people who have been recently dumped, or have that face a lot of loneliness or confusion in life, and people in high-stress situations are much more vulnerable to seeking out a sense of belonging and guidance that can be found in a tight-knit group like a cult. But anyone can be seduced by cults. It's part of our human nature to want to belong. Cults erode your sense of self by invading personal boundaries and stripping people of individuality. They give you a new identity, like a nickname or a role, to help support this. Cults also often have a special recruitment process that's enticing and intriguing to people. They have a structured lifestyle, which is great for people who aren't sure what they want to do with their life and want direction and purpose. We love to be part of a we. This is because we like to belong. We're also super lazy and we love labels because they allow us to use heuristics or mental shortcuts. This is why we use political parties, religions, genders, races, clubs, teams, etc. These things help define us and learn about another person quickly. If you say, oh, I'm this religion, this political party, etc., etc., you're going to automatically have associations with that label and assign those things to that person, even if that person doesn't necessarily believe in everything associated with that label. Groups can create a lot of problems. 1 is social loafing. This is because people are underachievers generally, and individuals will put in less effort when they're in a group than if they work alone. Another downside is group polarization, which is that in groups people will make more extreme choices or take more risks because they feel validated and safe being in a group rather than having to take responsibility for a choice on their own. Another disadvantage is the common knowledge effect, which happens when people discuss information that they already all know instead of new information that only one person may know. Also, groupthink, that makes people start placing conforming and being cohesive over being realistic and thinking for themselves. Sometimes conformity can be good. There are beneficial norms that we learn and adhere to. Society tells us to act a certain way in public, to be polite and kind, to not hurt others, to not act reckless or obnoxious. These are norms that people conform to, and they're helpful for helping our society function smoother and more unified.